All right. Welcome back. It's good to see you again on LinkedIn Live. I'm Brian Cristiano, founder and CEO of Bold Worldwide. And today, I have another fantastic guest, Dr. Bhrett McCabe. I'm really excited to chat with you today. We have a lot to dig into, but the topic today that we're going to get into is process and plan, how to build a winning team. First of all, before we jump into that, man, how's everything going?
Things are good. We're in the middle of summer, and we're having a great summer so far, and seeing a lot of successes. So that's always a good time.
Always a good time. Always a good time. Well, so the topic that we want to dive into is about how to build a winning team in an organization, right? And what you said to me before we came on live was, look, it's not a business plan. It's a mindset. It's a methodology. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think too often we've been caught up in developing these very comprehensive business plans that nobody actually ever follows. But I've got an alternative. So if I look at great organizations, I'm going to give you the cheeseburger test, all right? And the cheeseburger test, if I go into a restaurant and I order a cheeseburger, it's probably one of the most simple things you can cook on the menu. But if it's not very good and there's not a detail to how they create the hamburger, and it's not, it's a frozen patty and it's just some shredded lettuce and it's just a bun and they put it together. Why are they cutting out the details of something so simple? Why are they doing that? Well, it's more than likely is that they don't value that aspect of their organization and that value of that menu item. Well, my experience is many times organizations have those cheeseburgers on their menu where they just assume that it's not that important because they don't have a plan of attack. They don't have a process. I'm around great coaches. I played for a coach that won 5 national titles. We had what was called the system. I consult with Coach Nick Saban at Alabama football. He has the process. And everything about those systems and the processes of great organizations, every little thing that they do has a plan and a purpose behind it. It's not this overarching business plan that we sit and we make a presentation to a bank, but it's our operating plan. It's the focus of the details and the process of what we're doing. If you're a business leader, you're a manager, you're a sales manager, you're somebody out there listening to this, and you don't have a developmental plan for every person who reports to you, you're failing them. And I'm not talking one that you submit to HR. I'm talking about how to make them better. If you don't have a business plan an organizational plan for every customer you have, where they are in their readiness to act versus how you're going to move them to sale or to conversion, then you're failing them. And I would guess that 90% of the people listening to this are winging it.
Hey, now the question I have for you though is, it sounds like it's almost more like culture of how do you think about this holistically? No,
it's not culture, because I don't care what you have painted on the walls.
Right.
I want to know what you have pushing forward, and that's the big difference. This generation is very caught up in the culture, the organizational of having fun, and it's a supportive culture. And unfortunately, we spend so much of our energy trying to make sure that we have things painted on the walls and we have all the sayings all over the place. But if we don't have the driving principles, the core philosophies that lead our organization, the culture is going to take its own little way, okay? We can have it fun but not productive. I'd rather have productivity that has a nice work-life balance to create process and outcome. Listen, we can't be afraid to win. An organizational culture of what you're referring to in the theory is correct, but today's society, we've taken that and turned that into being, hey, do we have lunch on Fridays and can we bring our dogs to work? I don't care if you bring your dog to work. I want to know what you're doing with every client you have on your list.
It's so interesting that you put it in that frame, because I was just at a very large organization, 6,000-7,000 employees, and and I'm there and I'm absorbing it, and it's a beautiful, incredible place to be. But I'm looking around and I just go, man, these are like all these cool little perks, but where's the substance? Like, what's the work that's getting done? And the conversation led to, well, everyone here works really hard, but everyone's kind of going their own way because nobody really wants to be told that, this is how we do it. And that to me, fed into what you just said. Like, we can be and should be a winning organization. We can't win if everybody just shows up to practice every day and works on whatever they want to work on. If you're a football team and somebody shows up and they're doing push-ups, somebody else is running, somebody's throwing the ball, you're never going to win a game. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, for some reason, we've sold our workforce into this idea that in order to succeed, you have to have fun first. And and it's probably because case studies, but if we look at the venture capital world, the number of organizations that spend all their time on their perks and don't have a process behind it is the reason why people in venture capital spend so much money and very rarely produce results. Okay. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. There's obviously successes. But what I mean is, what are the core foundations of the way you do things? Right? What are the type of clients that you want in your business? What is your wheelhouse? Who are the people you're looking to develop? What type of employees do you want? Do you need employees that need to make sure that you have a foosball table in the break room? Or do you need people who say, look, just give me a computer and an opportunity to go, and I want to become the best that I can be? You need a little bit of both. But for some reason, we've embraced the tech culture mentality, which is, kind of free love and free opening and just do it as you can and wear what you want to wear to work. But the best tech organizations, what do they have behind them? They have demands about producing. And I think we forget that secondary part. Winning is more fun than anything else. And if you can get people on your team to buy into why they're wanting to win and what they can gain for themselves to develop who they are, they'll become a part of a winning program. If it's all about the benefits, they're going to find the next benefit somewhere else when they realize they're being exposed for failing to produce.
Well, and the thing about that is at some point you just cannot compete with the benefits, right? Like Google's now paying engineers out of college $180,000 a year. A small startup, a bootstrap company cannot even remotely compete with that. That's a perk. But my question though is, and I've been through this, right? Like I'm a big believer in saying it like it is, putting it all out on the line and building a winning organization, but it has its challenges, right? Because, people have this expectation from, whether it be society or college or, or these other organizations that are built on perks, that when you push hard, sometimes that's taken as a negative. How do you change that?
Well, Dan Pink in his book Drive said it perfectly, is that for a long time we've used the carrot to try to motivate our employees, but what we end up doing is we take the stick and beat them with it. Okay. The fact is that we have to find the intrinsic motivation of people. And what we have to do as leaders is to get people to buy in. You got to share your vision of where you want to go. Unfortunately, success is lonely. And that's the problem. Is that people that we recruit to follow our vision and try to create, when we don't have a philosophy and a process behind what we're doing, what happens is we become very reactionary. We see the newest, hottest thing and we jump to it instead of founding and grounding ourselves in the philosophies that are what are important. People are going to come and go, but you'll start creating a momentum of people who want to be there to develop. At the end of the day, it's what are you trying to serve and what are you doing to get there? We can be, the thing about social media is social media has become the old equivalent of old bank buildings. We can put a sign up on a big building and show that we're big and powerful, but we're broke. Social media does that with entrepreneur and small businesses. I can show you that I travel all over the world and I can take pictures by everybody and stand outside of a private jet, but I don't have a pot to piss in.
Yep.
Okay. And so what I find is people are really good at raising money, but they're not really good at execution. The number one failure of our workforce today, and it's business owners all the way down to line, entry-level employees, is execution. Doing what you say you're going to do and actually doing it. That's a skill that needs to be taught and refined by coaching people with a plan of what you're trying to do in a process.
So do you have any example from anything you've seen, whether that's in professional sports or business leaders, that stands out to you as someone that took this mindset and changed an organization or themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at, I'll give you an example. If you look at great teams, right, who do they bring into their organization or people to make them better? But I find organizations that are closed ranks and don't want to want to make sure that they're having fun. You see the old players coach mentality, right? No player wants to win with a players coach because they don't win. They love a players coach after a very demanding coach has left. The gymnastics coach I work with at the University of Alabama has spent a long time in the last couple of years really understanding her process in player development, athlete development, both on and out of the gym. And what we've seen is a sustained improvement and consistent over time that has changed the way that she develops her athletes, the way she brings competitiveness into her gym. And also when she works with an individual athlete, both in her office and in the gym, she has a very structured plan so that she's not reactionary to what's happening. As a result, she's having great success both in the classroom and in the gym.
I love that, and what do you think, as far as a business leader, CEO or an entrepreneur executive that is like, hey, look, this is resonating with me. We're not quite there yet. What would be the first step you would want them to take?
First thing I want any leader to do is what I call red wine therapy. Pour yourself a glass of red wine, and if you don't, go pour a cup of coffee. Get an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and start writing down your philosophy. Don't try to make it prose. Don't try to make it something anybody's going to read. What's important to you, right? What's important? Like it's amazing when I go and meet with businesses, and I ask the owner, what's important to you? Well, we want to do this. But if you can't communicate it to me, how are you supposed to communicate it to your team? What do you want? Where do you want to go? I have a very dear friend of mine who's a CEO of a trucking company, and he's run by a large firm. And he told me, he said that, he looked at his balance sheet and he realized that one piece of business was making him X, but what it cost was almost there. It took a lot of effort, but nobody wanted to give up that line of business. He made a strategic decision, remove that out of the marketplace, out of their decision tree. And while the total revenues went down, profit went up. That came from a philosophy for him, is that I'm not going to do things that cost me too much money to make a penny. I want to look for better decisions that better utilize my staff. So when he stood in front of his board and they asked him, why would you get rid of the revenue? He was able to communicate it in a way that he ended up having a pretty much a board meeting of success and celebration versus one of angst and stress. That's what I want people to understand. If you can't communicate it to your person standing in outside, what are the core values of your business? It's not about a mission statement or a vision statement. Let that go. What is it that you want to do in your business? I see too many people say, I really want to do this, but I'm stuck doing that. And as a result, they're frustrated.
Right.
But that is producing revenue. So you have to be willing to either say, that is my business and I have to focus on that because that's where I'm getting my business. Or if I'm going to abandon this to go to that, okay, and I want to work over here, then what am I doing to build that over here?
It's so interesting, right? Because I've been through that myself as well. And it's as soon as you start to get clarity, you're going to find things that, at least in my experience, that you really like. And you're like, I'm not spending nearly as much time or energy on these things that I like, that I enjoy, that I really started this all for in the first place. And then you find things like you said, where you're like, but I have to do this because this is, the revenue generator of the business or whatever it might be. How do you make a decision? Is it just personal, or is there a tactical decision to be made to say, how do you define when you're going through that and you got, maybe a bottle or two of red wine out and you're going through that process? How do you define, I'm just tired and I just would rather, do the lesser of the efforts versus this really isn't me or my organization and I should, come up with a new strategy to stop doing it?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to take an inventory of what you've done and where you're good at. Okay. So McDonald's has been testing pizza for 20 years and yet to bring it to the market. Why? Because I think it's going to confuse the marketplace, and they can probably make a great pizza. But it's not what they want to do, and they don't want to venture in that direction. But as an organization, you have to look at where you get, where do you make your money? Where do you have the most utilization of your resources and with the greatest outcome? And then you got to sit down and look at it and say, okay, if I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to separate the results that I make from the informed decision. If you look at Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he talks about the rational and the emotional brains that kind of work together, system 1 and system 2. We'll make those emotional, instinctive decisions, but sometimes we have to have the rational behind. So what I tell everybody to do is write it down, and then look at it again in 24 hours. And if it makes sense to you and you can see it, then you make that decision, but we have to separate results from it. Results are a separate entity. The decision is made within the vacuum of the decision. The results, now you have to have a different process to generate the results and to go with it. But you make the decision. And then what I always tell people to do is after you make a big decision, take a few minutes in your journal, wherever you journal, and write down why you made the decision, because there's going to be a moment down the road you look back and go, what the hell was I doing? But you can go back to what you thought in that moment. And it might have been right or wrong, but in the time, that was with all the information you had, that you thought it was the best decision.
It's so great because as I love that process. I think that's so tactical and so doable for anybody at any level of any organization. And so many of us just stay in the weeds and keep trying to move forward. And the example that pops to my mind, and now I know that the media has oversimplified it as if there was just one KPI or one thing that Mark Zuckerberg was always focused in on. But it was one of the main things that Mark Zuckerberg was always focused on Facebook was it has to create a better user experience. And so it just became this filter, this lens for how he made decisions on everything. Well, okay, great, this is going to bring in a bunch of revenue. Okay, great. Well, does it create a better user experience? No? Then great, that's not what we're going to do. And it's just, it seems so simple, but when you're in it and when you're building it, I think there's a potential to feel like you might miss out on something else by creating these filters or and these values for you to make decisions on.
Well, we have our own biases, right? And so the old entrepreneurial thing is, I see a need, I solve it. But it's entrepreneurial is I see the need and I solve it the way that it made sense to me. And what's amazing is, can you make that communicate over time to multiple different individuals? That's the generalization ability. Zuckerberg worked because it spoke to something that we were struggling with in society in that moment, which is connectability.
Right.
The ability to connect to multiple different tribes over a group of period in time and connect commonalities. And then their AI behind the scenes showed you to be connected with people you never knew you were connected with.
Right.
And so they leveraged that, and I think it was great. But I think you're right. You got to be able to separate yourself and say, what does the client want? Too many businesses have gone down following the Steve Jobs approach is, what do I like? Well, he was really good and very in tune with what people wanted. He wanted to solve his own itch. He wanted to scratch his own itch. But at the same time, we have a lot of people who say, this is what I want to do. I worked with a restaurant for a while who the owner wanted to serve one thing, but the market kept buying other things off the menu, and he refused to shift the menu. But his dream was to sell one thing, and he got stuck in it. Yeah. And it wasn't until he had needed money and capital came in and they shifted him did he start having success. So I think we as an owner have to take a step back every once in a while and say, okay, what can I do to be better? How can I get there? And what are the tools I have in place in order to achieve it?
It's interesting. I actually had a conversation earlier with Paul Ciardos, and we were talking about data and utilizing data, which in that kind of simple scenario is, I want to serve, whatever. I want to serve pizzas because at McDonald's, I'm the owner and I have a passion to sell pizzas. But if the data says that the customers don't want pizzas and they want a good burger, well, then you better be okay with selling burgers or maybe find something else to do. And that's just the reality. And the difference being that 20, 30 years ago, it was based on gut. I think this will work. We'll create something. We'll try to sell it into the marketplace, see if anybody buys it. Versus today, you mentioned Facebook. I mean, we know what people want. You got to use that and I guess overlay that with what you want as a person or as a leader and say, do these intersect? And can I move forward with it or not?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're seeing all the streaming services blossom out and pulling stuff off of Netflix. We got to remember Netflix, Amazon, and those are the greatest collectors of data that we have in our marketplace.
Sure.
Walmart was a retail store that's moved online. Are they going to be as great of a collector of information as Amazon? That's going to be the question.
Yep.
Netflix knows you. They know you inside and out. They're going to pull the streaming content off and move it to other platforms. But does Paramount know me as well as Netflix does? No chance. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it rolls out. And you're going to see the data collectors, the data aggregators that are making behavioral decisions based on that data dominate the marketplace over and over again. And the reactors, there's two types of people. There's reactors and there's responders. The reactors see the threat on the horizon and they do what it can to avert it. Responders see the threat on the horizon and they embolden themselves to weather the storm and get better through it. Which one is going to be, which one are you as a leader? Which one are the organizations? Reactionary organizations are things like, Burger King, US Air, who's now out of business, United, American Airlines, Dell Computers, which was innovative for a long time until they choked themselves down. Reactionary, responsive organizations are the Apples, Microsoft's. I think Microsoft is probably a little reactionary in today's world. You see some of the newer, quicker solving needs. They're much more responsive. And there's a reason for it. It's because they can be agile. Now, they're not agile in size of business. They're agile in decision making.
Well, you mentioned Netflix. I think that's a perfect example, right? You're 100% correct. Netflix is an aggregator of all this data. And what's really fascinating is they're collecting this data. Not only, do they see what people are watching, but then they're predicting what people will want. And the actual creation of new TV shows on Netflix is based on what the data is telling them to do. They're saying this is the kind of programming for these types of people with these types of actors. Okay, great. So let's go produce that. And they're able to now do what Hollywood would take 3 years to do in 6 to 9 months, and own the content, and own the distribution, and own the data. This is a whole new world. And you're right. I mean, we started kind of talking about, how do you, build a winning team, and how do you lead that, and making sure that you're leading in the way that is, I guess, authentic to yourself and what you want to build. But man, the data.
Well, the data is a reflection of
it.
the processes you put in place, right?
That's right.
Because we can get survey data all we want. And when I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, I kept fighting our organization and our market research to say, I know what you're saying with market research, but let me collect it with the customers I meet with. And what we did is we went out and we collected what I called passive insights. We went out and interviewed people, and they didn't know they were being interviewed. We were just collecting information from them. But what we did by doing that is we created a need in the marketplace by creating dissonance. And that dissonance is powerful because just like Netflix, the dissonance is you want high quality shows that has an edge to it, that you're not worried about censorship. You're not worried about, ratings. You're not worried about if somebody drops the F-bomb, right? You want authentic shows that are driven and they're phenomenal. And the beauty of what Netflix can do is they can deliver. Now, can businesses create a demand in the marketplace and deliver? That's the real question. And you have to create that demand with your client. You have to get them wanting what you have to offer. You can't flirt with them on, hey, I'm going to bring this, I'm going to bring this, I'm going to bring this. You have to create the itch in the market and then solve it with them with something to scratch. That has to work back to your team mentality. Everybody in your team and organization must understand that. Create the itch and then teach the customer how to scratch it with your tool.
I really like that. I know you and I have talked a bunch about that before. And, before we continue to travel down this piece, I think it's super, super valuable, and people are really interested in how to do that. Next Thursday, July 25th, you're actually going to be here in New York. Yep. We're doing Bold University. There's going to be a bunch of amazing speakers. Yourself, you're going to kind of be a pinnacle of a lot of this. So we're going to do a full day event from 9 a.m. all the way in till the sun sets for the VIPs. Tell me a little bit about that experience for anybody that hasn't bought their tickets yet. First of all, you can go to bolduniversity.nyc, or you can go to bolduniversity.com, and there's a link there. But tell me a little bit about what you're going to cover and teach everybody that is going to be here at Bold University next Thursday.
Well, we're going to talk about the very first thing we talked about was building a team and taking what the best of the best do. But then I'm going to filter it down into what you can do in your business from a psychological standpoint. Listen, all of business and marketing and management is psychology. It's all psychology. It's human psychology. And I'm going to teach you the skills on how to build a marketplace that you can serve and you can deliver on. But I want to do it from a systematic way that matches who you are. I want you to take my workshop and be able to know who you are and what your strengths are, and then build a plan that you can execute with your client base. I don't want you just selling to the fish that are biting. I want to get you getting the fish hungry, and they want you. When you drop that line in the water, you've got them ready right where you want them, and moving them ready and wanting what you have to offer more than just allowing environmental conditions to take over.
I love that. I think every single business, large or small, needs to not only understand this, they need to implement it and do it, because everybody is focusing in on, the Google pay per click. Whether I'm talking literally or figuratively, everyone's saying, okay, who needs my thing right now? I'll sell to them. Well, you're now competing with the entire marketplace. And so you're just a commodity. But what you're talking about is, how do you create, how do you get people to say, I want to work with you?
So even more than that, there's 5 stages that people go through when they're ready to change. And we've known this from psychological research for a long time. And I always think that 15% of the marketplace is ready to buy at any given moment. But if you don't have a plan for the 85%, then you're just allowing your customer, your competitor, to swoop in and take them. If you don't have a plan for the person who has absolutely no interest in your business, has no interest in your product and no interest in your services, and you don't have a plan to either develop them into a customer or pick their mind and use them as a resource to tell you why your product isn't working, then you're failing. And that is 40 to 50% of the marketplace. Unfortunately, we get indoctrinated and we get seduced by the moment by moment click because it makes us feel good. But the reality is the the farmed customer that we've developed, nurtured, and grown through our decision-making process isn't just a one-time click that we hope the product sells. It's a one-time click that converts into a long-time customer.
And those customers typically have much higher lifetime value. They stick around much longer because they wanted it. They understood you. They weren't just looking for a solution to a problem in the moment. They got to know you, understand you, and you delivered on what that was. And so you have a longer business lifetime with that customer.
Correct. And you're developing customers that are loyal to you because you have demonstrated that you have a service that matches their need. And they may not have understood what their need was. Right. Why do we assume that our customers know? But the big mistake that everybody in our world makes is they just lower the cost. Cost is never the decision as to why somebody doesn't choose to do something. Just like people looking at this right now about coming on Thursday, they may say, is it worth the money? Well, is success worth the investment to you? Because the money is relative. Now, I understand that people have budgets and I get that. I'm a business owner. But what's the investment that you're making? Starbucks has demonstrated over the years that a $5 cup of coffee is worth it to you. And people stop and go in there when really you go to a gas station, it's $1.
Right.
But the Starbucks experience, they've demonstrated to you that you can't have your day without it. I'm going to leave that up to what people want to make a decision on.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm going to roll in a little 50-second video, a little reel about Bold University. There's a lot of good footage of you in there, and then we'll come out of the back end of this, and we'll talk a little bit more of that, about how to create some dissonance in the marketplace, what people can think about, and then we'll wrap it up. So hang on one second here.
The strategy is the first 80%. The tactic is the last 20%. You just have to make sure that you actually go after it. Welcome to Bold. We help people get to the next level of where they're going.
So there you have it, man. If that doesn't hype people up, I don't know what will. I agree with you. It's look, everything in life is an investment, but you can choose to grow your business. You can choose to get access to the people that have done it before and have the insights and information. And that's what we're doing with Bold University. It's not just like a cool, keynote speaker thing. This is a full day immersive, working with you, working with myself, working with Chad, working with Marty. We have so many great people that are going to be here. So and it's going to be a really cool experience. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to help you get the process in place. And listen, if you're tired of sucking, you're tired of losing, you're tired of being frustrated and stuck where you are, why don't we do something different and actually get to work? That's what I do for a living. I help people who are stuck find their pathway. And it's a simple pathway. It just starts with you.
It's awesome. And the thing is, man, I think you undersell yourself. Like, you work with literally some of the top athletes in the world, some of the top business executives in the world and companies. And you have designed business processes for billion-dollar companies. So I'm excited to have you there. Now, let's dig in a little bit. We'll spend a couple of minutes before we wrap this up. I want to get a little bit more insights into, how do you actually create dissonance in the marketplace? Or maybe we don't have time to get into that because we'll save that for July 25th at Bold University here in New York. But where do you start? How do you even start to go and capture 80% of the marketplace instead of the tiny percentage?
It's a great question. So think about this. If somebody ever told you needed something, what's your first reaction? If I told you that you need something in your business, you go, oh, no, I'm dude, I'm good.
I'm good.
Thank you, man. I'm good. I don't need it. And then what you actually do is then you start downplaying or knocking down the other person's material. All right, that's why it doesn't work. So guerrilla mindset of just bombing doesn't work. We have to be more effective than that. Creating dissonance is about understanding that people have an ideal. They have a belief about what they have in your market, okay? So if you have a service that fits a need, your customers have a certain belief set around them. Do you know what those beliefs are? Do you know why they choose what they choose? Do you know why they rely on what they rely on? And do you know if they're truly educated? Do they believe what you have to offer? Dissonance starts by getting an understanding and kind of doing a little bit of customer insights to understand what moves them and what are their true decisions. You can make an assumption by 5 of your best friends that tell you in a market research, but the 10 people that sat around a table and took the money for market research are not the same 1,000 that you deal with on a regular basis. It's a snapshot that many times misses. Yep. Every customer you meet with, you should come back and collect information about what they like, what are their insights, who influences them, why are they influenced? And through that, all of a sudden, it'll open up as to where that dissonance can sit. Now, what I want people to understand is dissonance is like the popcorn kernel in the back of the teeth. It's one of those things that by asking questions, you're shining a light on an area that your customer leaves. They didn't realize that you shined a light on it. And 2 days later, they go, that's what he was talking about. So a simple question would be, if I wanted you to come to this workshop, which I do, I'm not going to say, hey, man, you got to come. What are you doing next Thursday? Instead, I'm going to say, when was the last time you invested in yourself? How do you invest in what you're doing? And where was the last time you had the opportunity to sit down across multiple different individuals? Now, that's short, that's quick, that's 3 different questions. But if the next thing you saw on a ad that we targeted you was the ad about Bold University with 5 different speakers talking about ways to invest in you, now all of a sudden, I've just created a little bit of a conflict that realizes that you probably haven't invested in yourself in a while, and you're probably frustrated that you feel like you're falling behind. So if I spend a little time tailoring in our conversation the fact that you're probably falling behind in your business, that you're not having the success that you want, and you have anxiety because you know that you're not performing up to your level, then I started asking you questions about what are you doing to invest in you and stuff like that. And now I gave you the option. You're ready and you're primed for it. It's an old psychological trip called priming. Now that's very quick and people think, oh, that's easy. That's normal conversation. But there's always much more formula behind it. And I'll share that.
And you're going to share that next Thursday, July 25th at Bold University. Man, look, Dr. Bhrett McCabe, man, I always appreciate you. What's really cool, and honestly, what I really love when you and I do content is I'm asking you the questions that I want answers to. So, like, this is just me, like, genuinely like, hey, yeah, tell the audience, but really tell me. It's always so valuable. I have implemented a lot of what you have said into my business. It really works, man. You work with some of the best people. I can't wait to have you up here in New York next Thursday. And, and if anybody's on the fence or thinking about it, there's some tickets left, bolduniversity.nyc or boldworldwide.com. Go check it out, lock up the tickets, and get to spend an entire day with Dr. Bhrett McCabe and 6 other really, really, really professional folks that can help you grow your business and build your team.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it, and I'll see you guys next week.
All right. Dr. Bhrett McCabe, thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.